Hello, good afternoon. Michael Wynn, Chief Digital Officer of Digital Ops, a division of RB Oppenheim Associates. Welcome to the Digital Marketing Podcast and video series where we talk about digital marketing strategies and tactics to help grow your business. Today, I want to talk about the 5 ways to amplify your brand in the 2020 explosion of original content across multi-channels. So what's going to happen in 2020? Well, here we are. We're in the first full week of the 2020 decade as we start off the new roaring 20s. And what's going to happen with brands? How are we going to garner attention in an era where things have dramatically changed when it comes to how we consume content? You know, I think over the holidays, I probably spent quite a bit of time consuming some of my own preferred content, which included consuming all of The Mandalorian, right, on Disney Plus. Great job to that brand for launching a successful streaming service. And then, of course, with a few selections from Netflix. Currently binging the series, the second season of You, captivating story of Will, whatever his name is, as he captures his little people in his glass box in the storage unit. So anyway, for those of you who don't watch the series You on Netflix, you might be missing out. But what I want to talk about in how are we going to amplify, how can your business amplify its brand? In other words, really raise awareness and really bring your brand to the forefront in front of the kind of people that you want to get in front of. Well, I think it's really interesting to me in just these few days. You know, I've had the opportunity to, I've had some prospects, prospective clients reach out to us. And one of the things that I find very interesting is how many brands are producing nothing and expecting for new business to just show up on their doorstep. I mean, it's really, really fascinating that, you haven't produced any new content in 6 months or 6 years, and yet you want to somehow instill brand confidence, in people wanting to, invest in your services, buy your products. You can't do that. I mean, I think about it. When I log into Netflix, and I'm looking through what I'm going to watch, and then all of a sudden my eye catches something and I look at it. And then after it takes me a minute to realize it's actually a show that I've already seen. They just changed the artwork, the cover on sort of the album cover, if you will, the card for that particular series on Netflix. That's a practical example of creating new content or repositioning content in such a way that it looks new and it looks fresh and it gets your attention. And I think a lot of brands have made the mistake in 2019 and 2018 for whatever reason. Their website is stale, their social media channels are stale, their blog is stale. I mean, their YouTube channel hasn't had a new episode or a new piece of video content in over 2 years. Like you're literally creating a perception that you're not in business, that you stopped doing business in 2016. And that's not what you want to communicate to people when you're trying to grow your business. So, I think it's like, you don't want to have this atmosphere of like, there's nothing happening here. You should move on, move along. You don't want that to happen. You want to create excitement. You want because you don't know, someone might come across your brand's, channel, whether it's a website or Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn. You don't know what channel or what pipeline they're going to come through. And so if you've not produced anything or if you've not published anything is probably a better way of saying it, that needs to be priority number 1 for you in 2020. Number 2, is to document, don't produce. And what I mean by that is I may say the words produce content, but what I really mean by that is create content and do it in a documentary style. And I think that a lot of people, because, we've come from this television world where, special effects and, CGI and, all the things that we can create this eye candy for, we've been, really seduced by that. But we've started this trend a few years ago where as Americans, we have become obsessed with real world, real people doing real things. And there's just a camera turned on, right? It's like we're able to kind of just be the fly on the wall, like, just experience what it's like to live in the life of, 8 women from Atlanta, or, I'm thinking of like, Housewives of Atlanta or whatever, and I know that show, they set up thing, but you get the idea. There's been this reality TV, but now the difference between reality TV and just a brand documenting sort of their daily journey as they go on with things, and do the things that they do, people who want more of that are going to search for that. They're going to go out of their way to look for that. And if you're creating and publishing content that's real world, just you at the, workbench or at wherever your station is, or however you're going to, kind of tell the story through video or through audio for that matter as well. I mean, you could do an audio walkthrough. That is absolutely key in 2020 as you want to amplify your brand. So, I found that true. I know I've talked about this over and over. I love playing fantasy sports. And, I thought it was really cool that this past weekend, there was actually a former bachelorette took down a $1 million prize pool in a GPP entry, a grand prize pool entry on DraftKings. And it just shows you the diversity of a genre of, online gaming and sports, and how, here's this, TV celebrity who's now engaged in an activity online, and on her Twitter profile, she's like, "Oh my gosh, thank you guys. My husband was razzing me because I started Derrick Henry or DK Metcalf, from Seattle, who both those players absolutely blew up in the wild card weekend." But it's interesting because I watch a lot of the YouTube content from some of the different shows like Osimo and just some of the other personalities and brands that do original content about building a lineup and how to play the game. So for me, that's the kind of content that I'm looking at, because we're in the middle of that season. So whatever your interest is, you're going to go out of your way to find it. And I think that is what is so compelling about creating original content. Someone may come across one of my articles or one of my videos because they also, love to play fantasy sports. And then all of a sudden we have that in common. In fact, a great example of that was over the weekend. One of the guys that I follow, Ian Hartz, he does this Twitter thing where it's like a helicopter dropping down a player that he thinks is going to do really well. And yesterday he put up this tweet about, you think you're going to make it to the wild card next, advance in the wild card series. And then he has a picture of the main character from the Netflix series You, which I mentioned that I like to watch. And so, all of a sudden I've made this connection with the brand, that this guy represents. And it's like, oh my gosh, like he's watching the show that I'm watching. And I think a lot of people, a lot of brands underestimate the ability to connect with people on this very granular one-to-one personal level. And you don't get to do that, number one, if you're just producing for the sake of production, because you're not going to be able to kind of have that, organic mention and part of the story. It's going to get edited out, because when you're producing for the sake of producing, you're going to edit and chop up and try to make this very, concise, boiled down piece of content. But when you're documenting, like I do every week, and when I produce these shows, it's really just kind of talking about, here's what we're observing, here's what's working, here's what you need to avoid. We're trying to help businesses elevate their brand and amplify their brand in 2020, because we are going through an explosion of original content being published across multiple channels, right? So that was number 2. Number 3 is create content for the sake of comments. Like literally that's what you're trying to do. So, many times when we post our videos, or when I see a video that's posted, even in the article, like I might say today, hey, if there's something that you like, leave a comment in the video below so that I can know, what it is that you're interested about in learning in the future. And I'll do a series on it. That's what I want. And you see that from many of these YouTube producers and podcast episodes and Facebook Live videos where, you're going through and whether you're doing a cooking show, or you're doing, sewing, or you're building a lineup for a fantasy football team, or, whatever it is that you're demonstrating, that you're literally live performing and documenting. It's not a performance. It's a recording of just yourself or your team as they go through and provide the kind of service. So create content, and the thing that you want, when you have achieved the end result, is you begin to get more comments. That is what you want to strive for in 2020, because what you're going to receive in comments is incredible data, incredible insight into how the market perceives your brand. Now, a lot of brands are afraid. They're afraid to have people comment on their content, because they might say something that comes across and not very favorably. And so if you have a process, a predetermined plan, when a negative comment is made, that is how you succeed in allowing the organic flow of comments to be made on your content. And don't be afraid of not having control, because guys, you're not in control of your brand. You're not in control of how people think and feel about your brand. You're just not. And I think there's a lot, that's probably the number one reason why many brands and individuals who are trying to develop their own personal brand do not produce or do not publish content, because they're afraid of the negative comments, of the less than favorable comments, because they don't know how to deal with that. So knowing that you're going to create comments is knowing that number 4 is you're going to engage with users. You're going to comment back. And you don't want to get into, I think one of the mistakes that you see often is people try to win a verbal war in comments. Not the goal. The goal of comments is to acknowledge that you hear and you've heard what the person has said, right? And then you want to demonstrate at some point, not in the comment section, that you've either addressed it or, acknowledged it, made a change, or what have you. But you cannot win a social media verbal comment war, and that's not the game you should be playing. The game that you should be playing is the engagement game, and again, the acknowledgement, the affirmation that that person's voice was heard, whether you agree with it or not. And so having a messaging strategy of when those negative comments are made, and then having, the objective outlook to be able to read those comments and put aside your own personal, feelings, and try to hear what the person is saying in their comment, or maybe, hear what they're not saying, right? I mean, there could be something kind of in between the lines that's not being said. And can you observe that? Because that could be incredible insight for future content that you're creating. So number 5 is to connect with current culture or your target audience interest. And again, this kind of information is what you're going to gain as you read those comments that are left. Just like I mentioned, the comment that, one of the guys that I follow on Twitter, when he put up the post about the Netflix series that I'm watching, like I want to follow him more because he's into the same things that I'm into, right? And you want to create that kind of relationship with your audience, that you're creating the kind of relational content that says, hey, what's important to you is what's important to me, right? That's the value. That's what you want to communicate, because when you can connect on that level, then there's this empathy that's shared, because we share this very same interest, in whether it's, pop culture or, whether it's, 80s culture, whatever that might be. I think that is the case. And so for me, culture is I love Star Wars, right? So I'm collecting these new, Star Wars little bobblehead vinyl characters. Love these guys. Finn from Star Wars, what a great guy, what a great character. Love how he fights, against the rebellion and against the Empire, joins the rebellion, if you will. But yeah, so when you can connect with culture, again, whether it's because you're trying to connect with current culture that is a shared interest with your target audience's interest, or if it's not current culture, but is its own subculture within your target audience, right? I mean, there's interests, there's topics, there's subject matters that are of interest of your target audience, and incorporating that in your documentation, in your filming, in your recording, in your publishing of content, that's key in 2020. So again, to recap, the 5 ways to amplify your brand in the 2020 explosion of original content across multi-channels is: number 1, make sure that you don't have old, stale content on your platforms, whether it's your website, your social media, or other digital channels. Number 2, document, don't produce. Remember, we are obsessed with watching real people doing real things. Number 3, create content for comments and analyze those comments for insight. Number 4, engage with your users. Ask for more feedback and input. Don't sell. Number 5, connect with current culture or current interest, shared interest with your target audience as you look to publish your original content across multi-channels for 2020. Guys, thanks for tuning in today. My name is Michael Wynn. I'm the Chief Digital Officer of Digital Ops, a division of RB Oppenheim Associates. Thanks for tuning in today, and we'll catch you next episode.